Okay, so it'd be great to start with a little bit of background to the project we're going to discuss. So, how did Solace and Absolics come together? If you like, what was the background to the award of the contract?
Yeah, so Absolics had a challenge in that they were setting up a manufacturing plant in the US, right? It's probably tied into the CHIPS Act and this kind of onshoring, nearshoring idea that we're seeing a lot at the moment, especially in the semiconductor industry. And so they had this challenge where they had a combination of geographical challenges, like how we're going to communicate across the Pacific, and also they were using this as a chance to modernize some of their systems. So this is where you bring in the idea of cloud, right? And essentially, one of the problems they had is, okay, so we've got our manufacturing execution system. That's obviously going to be running on premise in the manufacturing plant itself. And then we're looking at taking like our enterprise resource planning, our product lifecycle management systems, all of those are going to be running in the cloud, right? So you've got two kind of environment challenges there, a geographical challenge and this hybrid cloud kind of challenge too. Um, Now, we're talking here about the initial manufacturing plant, right? Absolics wanted a flexible approach to this. So, yeah, we're setting up one plant, maybe we'll want to set up more. How do we look at this whole problem of how we integrate our manufacturing systems with our IT systems, ERP, PLM, that kind of thing, in a nice flexible way that enables us to not just build a solution for this first and hopefully first plant, right? But the subsequent manufacturing plants that hopefully they'll be building. And that's where they came to it, because traditionally when you have this kind of integration challenge, you might look at a point-to-point solution. So I might send you a file that says, okay, here's our production run for the next day. And that's fine if you've only got one point that you want to connect to. But if you're looking at a more flexible solution that might be able to bring on manufacturing plants more easily in a more agile way, right? You need a different way of doing things. That's where the idea of this kind of event-driven integration comes in, right? If a customer wants to change on the fly the delivery date for their order, how do I move that from, say, a customer relationship management system all the way through enterprise resource planning to actually landing at the manufacturing plant? The idea being is that you react to things, you do the processing, the IT processing on those things as they actually happen, right? And that's event-driven integration. And that's how Absolics came to us in Solace. Like, how do we solve this problem of being more reactive and being more agile to our customers' needs, while at the same time supporting our ambitions for having multiple manufacturing plants maybe dispersed around the world? And that's where this solution, this idea of event-driven integration and the Solace platform specifically came to play here. So what the PubSub platform is able to do is able to connect together in a really nice kind of seamless way these different environments. And how that works is essentially you deploy the platform in all these different locations. You connect your applications locally to the local part of the platform, and the platform takes care of understanding where that data needs to be sent. So, for instance, you might have a production order that's being generated by an ERP system in a cloud region in Korea or wherever. And the platform takes care of understanding that, okay, we've got a manufacturing execution system in the US on premise. And the platform takes care of understanding that that production order needs to go from its cloud-based origin in the Pacific and transports it to the US on premise. And it does all that transparently for you, right? That's the smarts underneath the platform. And what that gives you is a lot of flexibility. So if Absolics were to start another manufacturing plant anywhere in the world, the platform would then understand that, oh, okay, there's a production order for America that needs to be sent to America. There's a production order for, I don't know, Europe or Asia Pacific. I need to send that to Asia Pacific on an individual basis, right? On a production order per production order basis.
In terms of your winning of the contract, I mean, I presume you weren't the only organisation they looked at. I know I don't know how much obviously they shared the process, but
Mm.
are you aware? Did they give you any particular reasons as to why they'd gone with your solution as opposed to others they had looked at? Did they share that?
Yeah, so um, part of the win here, kind of at the technical level, was this ability to understand where these events needed to be routed to in a WAN-aware manner, right? So understanding that, for instance, let's say that this production order has to go to multiple systems within the manufacturing execution system, right? You don't want to have to send those multiple times across the Pacific, right? Why not have them sent once and then whatever's running in the US understand that it needs to send to multiple things in the US and deal with it locally, right? So it's that kind of local connectivity, that understanding of the fact that there's a WAN presence too. Also, that ability to handle cloud, like the fact that some of your systems, like your ERP as an example, might be in the cloud, whereas your MES is going to be on premise, right? So the ability to deal with that in a really flexible way is what really won the deal for us, certainly against their incumbent solution.
Okay, and although I mean you've explained already quite a lot of what's going on, but perhaps you can just either refresh or expand in terms of Absolics. So, as I understand it, they're using your the PubSub Plus platform to build, if you like, the official sort of thing is a cloud-based event mesh using
Mm-hmm.
Solace event brokers. So
Yeah.
in practical terms, again, I say you've already outlined some stuff, but perhaps you can just give us a, a an over or a expanded view of what it is they've using you for.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned the idea of event mesh, and that's this concept of being able to deploy individual components, these event brokers, in multiple locations, and then connecting them very easily. And what these individual components, these brokers do is communicate with each other about who is sending out these events, who's sending data. We call it publish subscribe is the pattern we use here, right? So who is publishing what? And we use these idea of smart topics, which are kind of descriptors on these pieces of data. And then the event mesh also understands who is listening to these pieces of data. And that's the subscribe side of things. So what we might say is we might say, okay, I'm a publisher, I'm an ERP, I'm going to publish a production order. And I'm going to tag it with some pieces of data, like I'm producing an SKU, and I want it to be produced in this particular location, right? And I'll annotate that as metadata. It's called a smart topic on that production order, right? As an example. And then what will happen, obviously, is in Absolics US plant, they there will have their local manufacturing system subscribe, which is just a way of saying, I am interested in, say, production orders for the US. Now, what the event mesh does is all of these brokers communicate with each other to share that information, and that gives them the ability to route these pieces of data, these production orders, around the event mesh. So what we've done for Absolics is built an event mesh that's deployed in their current locations, that's connected up to their ERP and PLM and their other systems too, and it's connected up at the factory side to their manufacturing execution system, and then networked together, meshed together to form this event mesh that enables them to send these pieces of data around the world and across cloud boundaries in real time, right? So as soon as you publish a production order, it's immediately sent over to the manufacturing execution system. Now, one of the key things that Absolics had here was they needed to check that when events were arriving, they'd be in order, right? Because you can imagine if you're manufacturing one of these glass substrates, right, it's got to be done in a very specific order, right? So you don't want to be executing a polish on a wafer before you've laid down your tracks or whatever, right? So one of the key things there was this ability that we have to guarantee the order of steps that you're going to execute, to guarantee the order of these pieces of data, these commands that you're sending around, right? So we've deployed in their cloud environment, and we've deployed into their factory environment too. And as I've said, kind of connected them together.
And it'd be good to understand as much as you know in terms of how automated, if you like, this overall process is that you've been describing, and how much you are, I won't say simply, but you are shifting data to different places, at which point a human or several humans will make decision based on that. And maybe the supplementary, depending on what's happening now, how much more possible is it, if you like, in the future with maybe our friend AI, to spot patterns, trends, etc., and to further automate or spot things before they might go wrong, etc. Just I suppose to characterize the balance between man and machine, or human and machine now, and what might be possible in the future, if that's possible.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the first comment I need to make really is that what we're doing is in the event mesh is moving these events around. Okay. So it's up to the ERP system or the PLM system to decide what events they want to send out and how they want to react to those events. So, within the Solace platform, you're not typically having a lot of human intervention. Another point is that this is kind of an operational system, right? We're talking about the operation of a manufacturing plant here, rather than doing a whole suite of analytics on that data. Okay, so what we're not doing with the platform at a base level is generating insights. Okay, but if you think about it though, because you now have this single connection point in to understand everything, all of these events that are flowing around, right? That forms a good basis for you to build dashboards, to build analytics systems, and to hook in your AI. Now, I'm going to say something vaguely controversial here, and this is not Gen AI. So all of the people that are jumping on the Gen AI bandwagon, this is not a human agent that's going to interpret what's going on for you, or not yet anyway, certainly. This is more AI around things like, say, optimizing supply chain, for instance. So we have a customer that's managed to save something like 15 million euros a year just by optimizing their supply chain and making sure that their containers aren't empty, sitting empty on dock sites or in factories, for instance. And that's by plugging into understanding what's going on in the manufacturing process to be able to generate some insights and take some decisions on those insights, right? So if you look at the Absolics use case, for instance, you could see an extension of this, an extension that you could envision, and I'm sure Absolics are things around quality management, right? So what feeding in from, say, a third-party packaging plant as to what's happening with those wafers that they've produced in real time, as an example, or on the factory floor itself. So I think what you can see there is that although we're not generating those insights, although those human interactions aren't directly on the platform, there's certainly something that the platform improves. So examples could be interacting with the CRM system, right, and how that feeds into the manufacturing process, right? Being able to react to real-time updates with customers rather than waiting till the end of the day.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That makes sense. And in terms of the benefits, and again, I know as we've been talking, you've sort of alluded to some of them, but the specific benefits that you've been able to deliver to Absolics, I don't know whether you want to say a little bit about something like the importance of being able, the fact that they can manage their entire sort of API and events environment in, as I think you explained earlier, an integrated solution, as opposed, I don't know whether they were previously had, more than one sort of system, and therefore it was a bit difficult to amortize, but just why that makes such a difference for them.
Yeah, I mean, before they had to kind of build up their own technology stack. And I think one of the key things here is, I mean, we could talk about technical benefits like ordering and things like this. But the key point here is the flexibility. That's what they were really looking for. So in the previous tech stack, they would have had to build this one-to-one connection idea. What the Solace platform gives them the ability to do is to build this mesh concept. So another compelling use case here is another customer I worked with. They were able to reduce the time it took to onboard a manufacturing plant from a 2-week kind of IT project to an overnight service ticket kind of engagement, right? So you can see that there's a massive benefit there, not only just in IT time savings, but also in terms of flexibility. So if Absolics were to say, okay, we need to create a new fab, right? That IT piece of how do we connect that manufacturing plant into the rest of our IT system is no longer a massive concern, right? It's a almost like a click a button kind of exercise. And that gives you organizational ability, okay? The capability to react to things much quicker. Now, we all know manufacturing plants, right? In this segment, they're not quick things, right? They take several years, and certainly with the larger fab plants, right, you're talking billions of investment. But just taking the IT complexity out of that picture is a massive benefit.
And I'm guessing as well that the sort of the more automation, more automated data streaming management process. I mean, that's presumably, so I think what you suggested there, the speed. So we're getting much higher throughput potentially than what they were doing previously. Maybe even, I know downtime or lack of downtime, should we say, is the holy grail. Is that something that, I don't know whether they've measured it before or after, but hopefully, reducing or eliminating downtime as well as another benefit?
Yes, certainly. So, I mean, we can talk reliability SLAs. I don't want to talk about them in this particular context, as you can imagine. But a part of that is simplicity, right? If you have a complex system where you've had to stitch things together on a one-by-one basis, that makes it fragile, right? And regardless of the technical SLAs, when something is fragile like that, it's easy to break it. So if you're bringing on a new manufacturing plant and you accidentally break the current connections with your current manufacturing plants, that's going to lead to downtime, regardless of how reliable your platform is. Right? And I've seen that with other customers. Now, it just so happens in this case that the Solace platform is extraordinarily reliable. Where we grew up is in the financial services industry, in things like investment banks and stock exchanges, right? So you can imagine there that there are very tough SLA requirements, there are very tough uptime requirements, and there are very tough throughput and performance requirements, right? But that's the technology underpinning to this. But the real benefit there is, given that you've got all that in place, it's the flexibility that it gives you, right? It's your ability to react to things.
Yeah, so I guess another way of putting that is they're making or able to make better informed decisions
Yes.
more quickly, and as I think you alluded to in that container cases, I mean that can make millions of pounds more for the company or save whatever. There's huge potential there.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously that the whole, I mean, if you think about this from a kind of top to bottom approach, we start at the bottom. Another of our customers is a large consumer electronics manufacturer. What they do with their real-time data is they move around system and subsystem data. So you can imagine if you're integrating lots of subsystems, so it could be displays and processor subboards, that kind of thing. The ability to move around data around that, so for instance, parametric data, manufacturing metadata, the ability to move this around in real time means that as they spot downstream problems in the manufacturing process, they're able to very quickly trace them back to subsystem and component manufacturer. So it may be that there's an interaction between two parameters in two different subsystems that, maybe, I don't know, a display subsystem manufacturing parameter has gone slightly off. And when combined with, I don't know, a processor board parameter that's right at the top end of its, range of parameters, maybe that results in some kind of failure that you want to avoid without having to discard all of that work so far, right? So that ability to react to quite subtle effects in real time across the whole manufacturing process is obviously a huge benefit in terms of manufacturing optimization. So I've spoken there about subsystem versus system assembly. What I'm expecting to see is we can bring that down to the kind of component level. So in the Absolics case, obviously there we're talking about packaging manufacture, right?
Maybe, I mean, in finishing, is it possible? I don't suppose you do have a typical customer, but are there, shall we say, some typical conditions that companies will, before they engage with you, sort of experience and begin to, stress about and think, how are we going to address this? And then also, I guess, the way that you engage and then help folks on that journey. So I suppose, yeah, what are the if you like, the red flags that people will go, okay, right, we need to do something about this, and then investigating, they come across you, or they you engage with yourselves, and you can help them move forward, shall we say?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, as in this case, a classic example is we're having to bring cloud-based applications into the organization. How are we going to do that? How are we going to, do we have to do a big bang? Do we have to do a lift and shift and move everything to the cloud? Or can we do a kind of staged de-risk migration? Is it the case that we're going to have some applications in the cloud and some on-premise? This Absolics use case is an excellent example of that, right? And these can cause a lot of head scratching in organizations. That's where we want to get involved. Another one where customers come to us is we need to improve customer experience and also employee experience too. What's happening if somebody does something on a website and actually it's not reflected immediately in that interaction? So an employee interaction, it could be, I want to update my bank details for payroll, and I want to make sure that I don't miss the payroll deadline. Would have been nice if that would happen instantaneously rather than having to wait for a batch update, for instance. So these kind of challenges around experience to do with the people side of things. How do I integrate my systems together across cloud boundaries and across geographical boundaries? Another good case where people are scratching their heads and come to us is, as my IT landscape gets more and more complicated, I'm bringing more systems online and I'm struggling. I've come to a project, I've got to onboard, say, some software as a service application, could even be an ERP application. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, this is a multiple, even year project because there's so many different interfaces that I've got to connect and redesign and things like that. That's when customers start coming to us. And it's to give them a simpler approach to bringing all of these different data sources and syncs together, right? And being able to react to these in as they occur. So, the second part of that is, how do they engage with us? Well, really, it's a matter of what will happen is we will go into the customer and understand their landscape, possibly select a pilot use case, build out a pilot use case for them. That can be either directly with the customer or through a systems integrator or something like that. Build out that pilot use case, show the value, do an initial deployment. And then something where we're really good at is building on that initial deployment to grow applications onto the platform throughout the engagement lifecycle, right? So this isn't a, like, here you go, there's the platform, do what you want with it. This is a, you mentioned the word journey, right? It's a full kind of journey of building on the initial value to build out this event-driven integration across the customers and showing the value at every stage, right? So that you build step by step. One thing we don't really like to do at Solace is big bang migrations, right? They're high risk, it's difficult to show value. We want to really show the value stage by stage by bringing different applications in and showing different use cases.
Okay, it's been great to chat, and I mean, I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our viewers will as well. Really great of you to share the insights and give me some time, Tom. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. It's been great.